I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Geoff Stray, who has been a friend of the symposium for many years. And I think it was, early 2000s, I think, when you started talking about Chartres, about 2006.
2006,
yeah. And ever since, I've always been fascinated. It's like I've been waiting all these years to find out what research you've done and hear all about it. So a big round of applause for Geoff Stray.
Hello. Right, yes, this whole story's been going on for over 17 years now, since June the 2nd, 2006. So the talk will be split into two parts. The first part will cover what's happened since June 2nd, 2006 up until 2018. And then the second part goes on from 2019 to the solution today. So, the whole thing starts really with the Greek legend of Theseus and the Minotaur. You've probably all heard the story that King Minos of Crete had a wife who got a little bit, she had a bit of an affair with a handsome white bull, and the result was an offspring that was half bull and half man. So Minos and Taurus makes the Minotaur. The creature had a bit of a taste for human flesh, so King Minos had to have Daedalus make a labyrinth to imprison it in. And they'd won a war against the Greeks, and so the King Minos said that the Greeks had to send 7 boys and 7 girls every 9 years to feed the Minotaur. And after a while, Theseus, who was the son of King Aegeus of Greece, he decided to try and go along with the other victims and kill the Minotaur. So he went over there and he befriended Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, who gave him a thread to help him find his way back out of the labyrinth. Now, you might notice that this depiction of the labyrinth, which is the genuine depiction on ancient Cretan coins, it's not really a maze. There's only one way in and one way out. So something over the years has got lost in translation. But this is the depiction we have of the labyrinth from the ancient Greeks. Anyway, Theseus killed the Minotaur, managed to find his way out of the labyrinth, and he got the girl, and the rest of the story I will cut short. So the strange thing is that there's on the other side of the world, the Native American people, the Hopi, have these ceremonies which they perform in underground chambers called kivas, and there's a hole in the floor representing past eras and a ladder out representing the passage to the new era. And these transition points between the eras are called emergencies. An emergence is what they call them. And they symbolize it with this symbol of the emergence, also called the mother and child symbol, because this whole process of travel from one era into the next is a sort of an evolutionary progression, and it's seen as a birth or a rebirth into the new era. They even depict it with the ladder being like an umbilicus. So I knew about all that when I just happened to be passing Chartres in 2006. I was doing a book about ancient calendars, so I'd heard some rumours that there was this labyrinth on the floor that had been put down in 1201. Whoops, let's go back again. And it's got these 112 cups around the edge, which people have mistakenly called lunations or cusps, because they overheard Keith Critchlow, who was the expert who'd studied Chartres Cathedral for over 40 years. He was talking about lunar cycles and how 28 divides into 112, and people thought that he'd actually called these cusps or lunations. But anyway, that led on to the idea that maybe these were somehow for calculating Easter, because much later than 1201, between 1500s and 1700s, they did develop methodologies in cathedrals to try and find out an accurate date for Easter. We'll get onto that later. Anyway, I walked in there that day knowing about that, and I wanted to also see this, which is, it's a phenomenon where a light comes in from a high window and hits that little bronze nail there, and it does it on the summer solstice at local noon, when the sun is at its zenith, precisely overhead. Now, we have British summertime, which is 1 hour ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. In France, you have daylight savings time, and that's 2 hours ahead. But the fact is that it doesn't happen at 2 o'clock, it happens at 1:55, because Chartres is 5 minutes off the Greenwich meridian. And for that reason, a lot of people take their photographs at the wrong moment and the light not quite hitting the nail. Anyway, there I was on Friday, June the 2nd, 2006, outside the cathedral. Yeah, I still haven't been to the hairdresser. And there were 5 coincidences that conspired together to allow me to see what most people don't see. I did a quick calculation. There's about 10,000 to 1 chance of me seeing what I saw. So it was a Friday. I didn't know it, but since the 1700s, they've taken the chairs off the labyrinth. Before that point, they covered it up. But on Fridays, between Lent and November the 1st, they take the chairs off, but not on Good Friday. That was one thing. It was a sunny day. I didn't know that was significant. It was between mid-May and August the 1st. It was between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. And it was exactly 12:48 when I walked in there. And that was within another time, a 5-minute time window within the other time window within the other time windows. So when I walked in there, I walked straight up the aisle and straight up the middle of the labyrinth, and I saw these 3 lights on the labyrinth. And they were all exactly the same size, and one of them was sitting exactly in one of the cups at the top there. So I did a quick diagram of that. I thought this has got something to do with what these cups are for. So I did a quick picture, and then I went to look at the solstice nail. And this is the slab as it was, with the nail in it. And next to it is this window called the Apollinaris window, because it's named after the Saint Apollinaris, whose life is depicted in these images in the window here. And one of the images, Saint Apollinaris, is pictured toppling a statue of Apollo. Apollo was a Greek sun god, and that's why Apollinaris got his name, because he was destroying the previous beliefs of the pre-Christian people and their gods, which were seen as idols. Anyway, a little hole was made there. This was put in 1701, exactly 500 years after the labyrinth was laid down, and it was done by the canon of the cathedral at the time. So that is where the light comes from that hits the nail on solstice at solar noon. And you can see here, I was there on the 2nd of June, so the light was in this trajectory. It comes across here. This photograph was taken on the 16th of June, so it was at that level, but on solstice, 21st of June, it crosses in this direction here and hits the nail. So it goes slower. As we approach the solstice, the sun slows down and then it stands still for 3 days, and then its trajectory would go back in this direction again. So after I'd had a look round the cathedral, 51 minutes later, I went back and did another diagram, and I realised that I could now calculate the rough trajectory of these 3 lights across the labyrinth. That one was fading out, so it was less significant than those ones. But during my travels around looking at the cathedral, I'd noticed that there's this, one of these corners has been filled in outside on the south side, and there's a something above it here, which you can see enlarged. It's a cutout of the sun with little rays, and there's a tiny little hole in the middle, which projects a little light into the middle of the darkness there. So originally, this would have been covered with painted or engraved symbols. And there is still one in Rennes, which is a working model to demonstrate how it would have worked. So you've got the astrological signs up one side and down the other. This big figure of 8 is called an analemma, and throughout the year, this little dot travels down the figure of 8, down one side, back up the other side. When it gets to the bottom, the sun's at its highest, so that's where the summer solstice sun would shine its light there, and the top is the winter solstice with the corresponding astrological signs. The straight line up the middle is just the average. So, I don't know how I activate this, is it? You said not to touch this machine. How do I start the video clip without touching the machine? Can it be done on this device? So yeah, it took me 5 years anyway, after I had that initial visit, it took me 5 years before I managed to get back with a video camera. How do I start the video clip? That one? Oh, right. No. So how I do it on here normally is just like with the mouse and click on there. Oh yeah, that worked. Cheers. So this is what I saw in 2011, but this time I arrived on the 19th of August. And I realised as I got there that those elliptical markings on the floor were coming from low windows because the sun had gone down in the sky, so the lights I saw had travelled across the other side and the sun was now shining through the lower windows. But where were the lights coming from? I went up to the windows and ascertained where they're coming from, and the lights I'd originally seen in 2006 were now projected on the opposite aisle. So I went to the bookshop. I thought, well, somebody must have written something about this. I searched through all the books, pamphlets, magazines. There was nothing about the lights on the labyrinth. The only thing I could find was one leaflet, which you can see here, which had 2 articles by clerics of the cathedral. Now, when you look at those articles, they actually contradict each other. The first one says that the position of the nail was designed for solar noon on the summer solstice. The second article says it was designed for St. John's Day, the 24th, which is the Christian sort of replacement of the solstice. And they were both trying to make the whole thing sound insignificant. One of them said, "Don't bother coming to see this. It's no more significant than a train coming into the station on time. So it's not worth your bother." So there's not many pictures of the light hitting the nail, like I said, because people often get it wrong because of the confusion about the bit 5 minutes off the Greenwich Mean Time meridian. But the whole thing was getting very popular in recent years. As you can see, that in that case, it is hitting the pretty well hit on the button there. And yes, they had started to encourage people to come and see this, but then there was talk that they didn't really like the cathedral filling up with esoteric type of people interested in the summer solstice and not in Jesus. So anyway, after doing that filming, I went back home and tried to collate all the bits and pieces onto one image. So the green ones are the ones I saw in 2006. The red ones are the ones from low windows, which I recorded in 2011 from the low windows. And once I realised that I'd actually moved the tripod, that sort of made more sense, because then they're all showing the same trajectory. Those are just from coloured windows there. So those are from the low windows, and these are from the high windows. So I realised that I needed to look into the sundial science in order to solve this. And to design a sundial, you have usually got a gnomon, which is a pillar that casts a shadow. Right close to it, you will have the line of the summer solstice trajectory of where the actual shadow would be cast of this gnomon. Straight across the middle is a straight line, which is the equinox. You can see the top here. It's the same thing upside down. You've got the gnomon there, summer solstice line there, winter solstice line there, and the equinox line, straight line down the middle. And that's another one. But what we're looking at is a reverse of that, because we've got a light instead of a shadow going onto a light area. We've got lights going into a shadowed area. But it's the same thing. So this technology has been going on for a long time. That's from 70 AD in Greece. Officially, the archaeologists tell us that the oldest sundial, this is a wall sundial, was from 1500 BC, but the alternative astronomers, the archaeoastronomers, have realised that this one on the curbstone at Knowth in Ireland works perfectly well, not only for telling the time, but if you stick a gnomon in there, it will tell you the solstices and midday and dawn. So what is an analemma? It's if you photograph the sun in the sky every day for a year, you'll come up with this figure of 8. And the summer solstice is at the top and the winter solstice is at the bottom. But as I said, when it's shining onto a gnomon, the whole thing gets reversed, because then the summer solstice is closest to the gnomon and the winter solstice is further away. So it's kind of like a mirror image. So you can get the software to calculate these things, and you can choose on it whether you want the average hour signs on each hour, or whether you want an analemma wrapped around every one of those. I managed to locate some of the software, and you can see the one that they give as an example here tells you the kind of information you've got to supply. You first of all have to put in the time zone, how many hours before or after GMT, or UT, Universal Time, same thing. The location, in this case, it's Berlin, the latitude and the longitude in degrees and minutes of longitude, the height of the gnomon. Then you have the local time. Incidentally, it will automatically, the software, translate it into decimal version of latitude and longitude, and don't get them confused, because that's 13.41 degrees east, which is 13 degrees 25 minutes. So local time, 9:41, date 2017, and April the 8th. So once you've got all that information collated, you can stick it in there, and it will calculate for wherever you are and wherever you're designing your sundial. I did that for Chartres Cathedral. You can get the exact position from Google Earth, actually, to the nearest minutes and seconds. So it's plus 2 hours from GMT. It's at latitudes and longitude. I had to estimate the gnomon height, because I didn't know the exact height of where the light was coming in, but I adjusted for that later. 12:48, the moment when I saw the sun in that position where I saw it, and it says 2014 because the software can only go back a certain about 5 or 6 years, but the difference between 2014 and 2006 is less than a millimetre, so it's not significant in this case. The date was June the 2nd, 2006/2014. So it generated this pattern. So the summer solstice trajectory will be the black line, June the 2nd trajectory is the green line. The pink line is where it will be on the equinox. So that's where the sun was at 12:48, June the 2nd. Then I had to get a cathedral plan, accurately put the labyrinth onto it, ascertain where north was exactly, and then rotate the cathedral so that the patterning plan and the cathedral plans both had north in the same direction. Once I'd done that, I was then able to chop the middle out of that, ascertain the exact point where the centre of that circle is, and put it on the exact cup where I saw it at 12:48. Once I'd done that, because I didn't know the exact height of the gnomon, which is represented as this, the height is represented as the horizontal red line. The position of it is in the centre of that circle. Then I had to, with Photoshop, enlarge and shrink it until, while keeping that where I saw it, enlarge and shrink the whole thing until that's exactly on the line of these windows where I knew the light was coming in. Once I'd done that, I could freeze it, and that's the patterning that will be projected onto the floor over the year. So zooming in on that, you can see here's the summer solstice line, and it crosses the exact centre prong of the labyrinth there on the summer solstice, because up until the solstice, the lights come in from that direction, they slow down, stop there, and then they go back that way. So, unfortunately, that was not on solar noon, though. Solar noon happens when the light gets over here. So I thought, well, if the design from 1701 with nails in the floor has been a copy of this, then there must be some sort of nail or marking in the floor to mark solar noon when that light hits it. So, to try and work out from this point onwards what happens to that, hang on, how do we go back? There. First of all, you start off with the times at which on the solstice, that the software tells us that the sun comes in and out. I refined it later on to make it more accurate. But yeah, solar noon's up there somewhere. So then we have to find out, well, what's the significance of the 112 cups? John Martin answered this question for me, but I should have known because Robin Heath had already told the answer to it, which I had read in his book many years before. And weirdly, John Martineau had written the introduction to that. So, at Stonehenge, we have an eclipse predictor, as explained by Professors Hawkins and Hoyle to astronomers, who explained that the 56 Aubrey holes at Stonehenge can be used with 4 markers moving in different speeds in different directions in order to calculate eclipses. Now, 112 is exactly twice 56. So for their formula to be doubled up would be exactly how we could create an eclipse prediction machine out of Chartres Labyrinth. The only 2 criteria that you need is something here. You've got the heel stone at Stonehenge to determine summer solstice position. Well, we've got that at Chartres, as you've seen. Well, as an aside, it's not really named after the Greek sun god Helios. It's because at a certain time of year, when the shadows are just right, you can see it's a big foot with the heel stuck in the ground, hence the heel stone. So here, the other criterion we need for the eclipse machine is a tracking of the northernmost moonrise. And at Stonehenge, you've got 6 rows of post holes where they've tracked the 18.61 year cycle for 6 cycles to check. So when it gets to there, you can reset your clock, basically. So they would have had calendar priests, or whatever you would like to call them, who were controlling these 4 markers. 2 for the lunar nodes, which is the intersection point of the solar and lunar planes. They would go in this direction at the rate of 2 Aubrey holes per year, both of them at the same time. And opposite each other. The sun, you'd have a marker for the sun moving 2 holes every 13 days, and a marker for the moon moving 2 holes every day. So the moon would do 1 circuit every lunar month, and the sun every solar year. So when they put this idea out, the archaeologist who was in charge of the excavations at Stonehenge said, "What a load of rubbish." I mean, this was Richard Atkinson, who's famous for saying that ancient people that built Stonehenge were howling barbarians. And he said, if there was any truth in this, then there'd be something written down historically about the connection between 56 and eclipses. And there isn't anything. However, he was wrong, because Plutarch, 2nd century AD, or could be the 1st century, he was quoting Eudoxus from 370 BC, who said the 56-sided polygon is said to belong to Typhon, the god. Some who give the name Typhon to the shadow of the earth, in which they believe the moon falls and so suffers eclipse. So there you have the connection between number 56, Typhon, and eclipses. And incidentally, Typhon was depicted as like this, with 2 intertwining snakes instead of feet, which is very significant, because the depiction of the lunar nodes for thousands of years has been as either as 2 intertwining snakes, or the head and tail of the dragon, or even in Chinese astrology where they call it Ketu, which is dragon, or the ascending node, and that's the ascending node symbol, and that's the descending node symbol. So, to double up the formula for Chartres, it's not 2 Aubrey holes every 13 days for the sun marker, it's 4 cups every 13 days. And we've reversed the directions from the Hoyle and Hawkins method because of the way everything's reversed when you're using a gnomon. The moon marker moves 4 cups every day clockwise. The north node marker 6 cups per year anti-clockwise. The south node marker 6 cups per year anti-clockwise. So they both do 1 tour of the whole labyrinth every 18.61 years. The moon marker is adjusted at full and new moons because there's no whole numbers in astronomy, and just like we have a leap year to add up the extra bits that are over 365, you have to do the same thing with the lunar cycles, and there's a sun marker is adjusted at solstices and equinoxes. And the node markers are adjusted every 18.61 years at either the northernmost moonrise, or I've now adjusted the whole system to the southernmost moon set, because 2 archaeoastronomers have now ascertained that that was observed from Chartres Cathedral. And so that leaves us with how we get on to the next phase. Is you have to make a clock out of the whole thing. So you start off with the summer solstice position, which we've ascertained. Opposite is the winter solstice, and then the 2 equinox positions, 28 cups between each of them, adding up to 112. So you'd need to have 4 markers, just like in the Hoyle and Hawkins system. You could use candlesticks like these that come from Chartres, or you could use pillars or statues of saints, whatever. And then you'd have to have 4 people, or 1 person minimum, because the moon marker would have to be moved every day. But a quick aside about the history of this place shows that the first thing on the site was a Neolithic dolmen that has been observed in the 1700s and reported by Charpentier. And that is now encapsulated within the crypt, in the so-called unexplored part of the crypt, or the unexcavated part of the crypt. And its existence is denied by the authorities. After that, the place became a Celtic shrine for the... there's this well in it in which people were martyred. It's called the Well of the Strong Saints. After that, there was an early church on it that was destroyed in 858, then a Carolingian church that caught fire, and Fulbert's Cathedral also caught fire, burnt down and was replaced by the current cathedral that was started to be planned and built in 1194. The floor was laid down and installed in 1201 AD, and the whole thing wasn't finished till 1260. So, something else we need to do here before we go forward is to ascertain the orientation of the cathedral. A lot of people were saying that it's pointing to the summer solstice. It's actually, several people have differed slightly on, let's just go back again. Where were we? There. People have differed on exactly what the degrees are, but eventually I ascertained the exact orientation of the cathedral is not, it's 9.5 degrees north of solstice sunrise, and it in fact is aligned to northernmost moonrise, which is the final thing we need to turn this into an eclipse prediction machine. And on the end of the cathedral, where the arrow is pointing, there is this statue. The northernmost moonrise was exactly in line with the cathedral about the time they built the first church on it. So it seems as if it took the orientation of the dolmen that was already on the site. And if you plant Chartres on top of Stonehenge, the orientation is there, whereas the northernmost moonrise post holes are just straight underneath there on Stonehenge. It's all in the same place. So if we go forward and have a look at this thing, by the time they had built the cathedral, this version of it, the position of the northernmost moonrise on this horizon over there had moved 1/12 of a moon diameter from when the first church was built. So it would now be right behind, if you're standing on the other end of the roof, it'd be right behind that Templar cross. Every 18.61 years, they would have to check the alignment, which could also have been done towards southernmost moonset from the balustrades at one end or the balustrades at the other end toward the northernmost moonrise. So, first thing we have to do is find a solar eclipse. In order to get all the things in a starting position, the markers, we find a solar eclipse, and there was one recorded historically in 1230 AD on May the 14th. It's actually recorded on NASA website. And historians reported that everybody had to go back to bed. So we know where the sun is on the solstice. We just wind it back those four cups every 13 days till we get to May the 14th, and that's where the sun was on this clock in the eclipse position. Now, for the nodal markers, Hoyle and Hawkins suggested that that's the starting point, where every 18.61 years it comes back there, and that's when everything is checked and recalibrated. So every 60 or 61 days, it makes one jump up there. So for 3 lots of 61 and 1 lot of 60, and then it comes to this position up here where the node is at the solar eclipse. The last thing is that you want to know is the moon's position. So you know it's within that shadow area up there, according to Hoyle and Hawkins. That's, if those 3 things occur anywhere in there, you have a solar eclipse. To get the moon's precise position, we move it forward to the lunar eclipse that happened 14 days later, which you can see here, because that gives you a more accurate rendition, and then we move it back again to find out exactly where it was. That's the picture on the NASA website showing the exact eclipse shadow at that eclipse. So if we go forward, we now have my animation of the whole process, which I've had to redo because somebody denied me permission to use the previous photo. I'll go into that maybe if I've got time. So how do we do this? I press that. No, back again. So that's it. There you go, it started moving there. As you can see, the nodes are moving every 60 or 61 days. That's the ascending node, the descending node. There's the corresponding date and the jump. Turn it up a bit. Solstice position there, where they So once you've got a working eclipse machine, it's pretty easy to calculate Easter. What you have to do is put the sun in its equinox position here, move it forward until while you're still moving the moon, until the moon is then opposite the sun exactly. Then you have a full moon. It's the first full moon after the spring equinox, Saturday, 30th of March. Easter Sunday should theoretically be the next day, because that was a Saturday. Sunday's the first Sunday afterwards. But when we look it up in the tables, it's actually April the 7th. And this is because the Pope, as Christianity was expanding, he said, the whole world's got to have Easter on the same day. So they brought some special tables out because it's nighttime on one side of the world and daytime on the other. The day doesn't start at the same time. So the table said everybody's got to have Easter on the same day, so special tables convert these dates into Easter days. So, in 2006, there were these Templar crosses surrounding the labyrinth. There were 6 of them. By 2011, when I went back, they moved these candlesticks and planted them right on top of the Templar crosses. That's the position of the Templar crosses there. Now, this is about as far as I got in 2018 with this. And when I did a presentation on that, this was the last slide, and I made an appeal to the audience. If you're going to Chartres, can you just check, please, if there's any nails in the floor over there? Because if there are, then that, shows that I'm really onto something here. Anyway, after that, that goes into part 2. 2019 happened, and somebody's seen the video of the talk I did, and she's a tour guide in France, Rebecca Lynn. She sent me these photographs. Yes, there are some nails in the floor, exactly where you said. So I got very excited. I took the time off work to go over there, but lockdown. So the visit was postponed until summer solstice 2023, when I went with the lovely Jane. And we were we're smiling there because we met some friends in the cathedral, but we were pretty shocked by the renovations that have gone on, because I'd heard about it, but they've completely painted the whole insides bright white and yellow with faux marble pillars now. And it's almost dazzling when you're in there. This is what it looked like before when you went in, and it was just the stained glass windows kind of made your jaw drop with amazement. And they had special blue glass that was made by alchemists. Apparently, they've even polished the windows to make it easier for people to take flash photographs without reflections. I noticed next that they had actually painted over all the Templar crosses and emblazoned them with saints' names. In this case, it's Jacobus across the middle there. The Black Madonna, which is actually carved out of walnut, was painted pink like a Victorian china doll. It's got nothing to do with incense smoke damaging it because it was in walnut. Then we found that the solstice nail was not able to be viewed because it was covered up with boarding. And they had even the lights fuzzy because they were cleaning the stones outside, and they had gauze up against the window. This is supposedly to protect it from damage in the renovations. And now, if we find out what's underneath there now, is this damage from renovations, or has somebody tried to? It looks like somebody's tried to chisel it up, and they've caused a big crack down the middle. Anyway, worst of all, I'm not going to cry, it's all right. I'm going to have a drink of water though. Worse than all of this, the lights on the labyrinth were gone. Not only were the chairs on there, because they started taking them off for about a 6-year period, and then they decided they didn't like all these weirdos turning up. So they started to just take them off on Fridays. But yeah, they've blocked the windows up. I couldn't believe it. And I kept rushing outside and rushing back in. That's telling me I've not got long. Anyway, I rushed out, back in, no. And then there's a sign saying that they've done some work on the windows. And Rebecca Lynn told me to have a chat with this guy who is a 90-year-old, well, he's over 90, he's an English guide for the cathedral, Malcolm Miller. And so Jane said, hello, and he said, oh, if you want to talk, it's a guide, it's very expensive, you'll have to arrange it on the internet. And I said, oh, would you mind if we ask you a couple of questions? And he looked at me and said, oh, I saw you yesterday, because I had my tie-dye shirt and blue sandals on, and I've been measuring the nails on the floor. And he said, if it's about the solstice, I'm not interested. That was all from 1701, and it's got nothing to do with this cathedral. And then one of the people he was guiding around there, she said, yes, he wants to put a stake through all of that. It's the exact words. And so I said, oh, yeah, okay, well, what about the lights that were projected on the floor of the labyrinth, you know? He says, well, the windows have been repaired. I said, yeah, but they were all exactly the same size and they fitted exactly in the cups. Well, if the windows are broken, they have to be repaired. And he said, anyway, any hole makes a circle on the floor. Okay. So we were rather dejected after that. Well, I was. So I came back to the UK, spent several days on the internet searching before I found this picture from a Chinese website that actually vindicates me, because I hadn't got to take any photographs of the lights on the labyrinth. And this one I've calculated was taken June the 12th at 12:23, probably in 2015, because that was a Friday on the solstice. June the 12th rather was a Friday on that in that year, and it was posted just after that. Then we found this one, which saved the whole project, and this is taken by a professor at Columbia University in New York. And if we zoom in on those two lights there, they are just about to hit the central spike there. So immediately I knew this was on or very close to the solstice, and it was at 12:52 p.m. because I now calculated it hits here at 12:59. Actually, how it transpired, that solstice in 2010 was a Monday, so it must have been, unless the cathedral had a special arrangement to take the chairs off, which is possible, then it would have been the previous Friday. And you have a standstill, as I've said, so the light would be in the same position for 3 days. So on the Friday, it would only have moved up maybe an inch. So I was able to confirm my diagrams with more accurate methodologies, calculating the exact times of that the lights go on and off the labyrinth. And then I was able to project it onto an overhead and see that it actually doesn't hit the nails, because that's where it is at solar noon, and the nails are over there. So that was all rather disappointing. So I had to, I mean, this is a photograph that I should have taken at 12:59, but I had to do it on Photoshop. But it will never be seen again because they've now blocked the windows up. So I was a bit disappointed because 56 minutes before solar noon, it hits the tooth. The pair of lights may have coincided with the nails at about half an hour after solar noon. We'll never know. But nothing happens at solar noon, which I'd been expecting to find. However, all is not finished yet. Enter Sylvia. Now, Roma Harding had been helping me with the editing of my book, and her friend Sylvia, who's she's the chairperson of RILCO, the Research into Lost Knowledge organisation. And in 2004, did I get that wrong? No. Yeah. 2004, summer solstice, Sylvia and her friends here went to visit Chartres, but mainly to look at that solstice nail, and they photographed these lights on the floor. And then they watched as they moved forward to the next row of chairs, moved the chairs to one side, took some more photographs, and then they noticed there was another light at the bottom, and she thought, oh, that looks like it's the same size as the cup. So she measured it on a paper bag, and then sure enough, just after that, it ended up sitting in one of the cups, which you can't see very clearly because of the flash from her camera. But this enabled me to add these to the overhead. So Sylvia's lights are, I mean, that's one that moves forward to there, that's another one, that's a third one, that's the fourth light in two positions. However, they didn't fit onto the same trajectories. And I thought, hang on, also, watch this light here. Murray's photograph didn't, that's Professor Murray from Columbia, his photo didn't show these lights. So eventually I realized that they're actually not the same lights. They come from a different window. They're on a different trajectory because they originate from a different window. So if we look at an analysis of the windows, that window, the St. Jerome window, is the one that projected Murray's lights and the lights I saw, whereas Sylvia's lights are projected by the St. Solenis or St. Solene window, which is just there. Now, if we look at a close-up of those saints in the window, you'll see the little holes around their halos are where the lights are coming from. They're the gnomon holes. Now, you might also notice that there's this little spiral here, which is the Neolithic sign for the solar movement. You might also notice that these two halos, you've got a golden one and a silver one, like the sun and the moon. But also, the name Solenis encapsulates the word sol, the Roman sun god. So Apollo, from the Apollinaris window, encapsulates the Greek sun god Apollo, and this, the Roman sun god Solenis. Once I'd put Sylvia's and Professor, what's his name was? The Columbia University ones, Professor Murray's two lights trajectories together accurately with the most accurate methodology I could find. These are the four gnomon holes. Those are from the ones that I discovered and Murray had photographed. And these ones are from Sylvia's lights. They cross exactly on the top prong of the labyrinth. that was amazing enough. But then when I did the timings, I realised that Sylvia's light hits that point at exactly 1:55 solar noon. I was somewhat amazed by that. So, in other words, this is another photograph. It's actually the same picture, but it would have also been repeated at solar noon had I been there and the windows had been intact. So I could take the photograph, then I'd have had another photograph like that of Sylvia's light crossing the central prong. Now, how does the shift of obliquity affect all this? So we have the cycle of obliquity is a 20,500 year cycle from one extreme of the Earth's or angle of inclination, from one extreme to the well, it's 20,500 years to go one way and 20,500 to go back the other way. So 41,000 year cycle altogether, from minimum to maximum, maximum to minimum either. So that would affect the positioning of these lights. Now, with the help of some more software and Simon Banton's information, who's an archaeoastronomer, I was able to calculate the difference that would have made, so that the red lines and circles here are the positions in 1201 when the floor was laid down of the Murray lights, the professor from Columbia University. Would have made that amount of difference. Now notice, that means that trajectory carries it straight across cup number 1, which is where I'd calculated it to be anyway for the clock. And then when we add Sylvia's light to the picture, of course, it's exactly the same in this area because the two trajectories cross just there. So what we can now say, this is the picture I just showed you twice. This is now at solar noon, 2010, or, the difference with the obliquity now is fractions of a millimetre between that and today. So that's how it is now, and that's how it was in 1201. And you can see the two trajectories of the Murray lights and the Sylvia lights begin to diverge from that point. One at 12:59 and one at 1:55 solar noon. So when we look at that cup there, it's actually made of a different rock than all the other tiles in the cathedral. Has it been replaced? Well, not since I've been visiting the cathedral, but at some point it looks as if that tile has been replaced. Could it be that there was an original solstice nail right there? Now, just going back towards the origins of this place and the dolmen in the basement, I drive the tour bus for the Megalithomania conference every year, and 2023 we visited this dolmen down in Cornwall, Trevethy Coit. And it's the archaeoastronomer that we had with us told us there's a hole in the capstone there that shines a light into its own shadow on summer solstice at local noon. Very similar, perhaps, to the dolmen that's still encapsulated within the unexplored part of the basement. What happened there? Hang on. So that's us. This is Gary, who may be here somewhere. It was a rainy day in May, so we didn't get to see the light on that day, but Gary is holding a picture by Roy Goutet, who's written a book about this, which I've read, and it's very impressive. He makes a very good case that this dolmen had partially collapsed and has been rebuilt wrong, and the capstone's now at the wrong angle. So, and Jane and I went this summer solstice 2024 to visit it, and we saw the light come down. It didn't reach its full culmination. It was just like a dagger of light, because it reached full culmination at 5:30, by which time, this is what I've calculated, by which time the sun had gone behind the clouds. So we didn't get to see that, but that's Roy Goutet's photograph of it. So it would be somewhere just beyond Gary's feet at 5:30, but originally it would be up there. So could the original dolmen have contributed not only its alignment to the northernmost moonrise, but perhaps even the idea of a projected light on the summer solstice at solar noon. As I've said, this technology has been going on for thousands of years, and I visited 4 out of 5 of these places. These things are not being avoided, looking at these in Italy, because between 1500 and 1700, the Pope's wishes to solve the calculation of Easter problem resulted in the building of meridiana, they're called, where they have a meridian line, which, as I explained on those sundial diagrams, it's a north-south line, and when you draw a north-south line, you can mark the equinoxes and solstices on it. That enabled them to calculate. Look how many people are there. It's being celebrated by the priesthood as well. Now, that's a close-up of what they would have seen when they took the carpet off, just solar noon equinox 2016, and this one is solar noon just before the summer solstice in this case, because he was a couple of days early. So Notre Dame celebrates the Virgin Mary. Has got 4 feast days celebrated there. The well that was already there was in dedication to a pre-Christian fertility goddess called the Virgin who shall give birth, something the Christians didn't really like. So they said it was they basically said it's a mistake, and they were talking about Mary. But how do they explain the fact that there are 273 stones in the pathway of the labyrinth, which is the average human pregnancy? Chartres celebrates the holy pregnancy, which the Hopi symbol, called the mother and child symbol, and was all about fertility and birth. Mary conceived 9 months before the spring equinox. She conceived at the winter solstice, all of which are marked on our eclipse machine. But the Bible, well, the Pope, in his pleas for them to solve this Easter calculation problem, he said, look, we've condemned this book, we've banned Copernicus's book, but if you like, you can use his theories for calculations because they knew it was going to work, but you're not allowed to believe them. And then they went ahead and burnt Giordano Bruno and arrested Galileo. Now, very briefly, the cover-ups that we've mentioned here, I mean, they start with the banning in 1538 of the pilota dance, where the bishop stood in the middle of the labyrinth and tossed a yellow ball to the clerics who were dancing around the cups. That was banned. Then the labyrinth was hidden by chairs for hundreds of years in 1700, up until the 90s when they started taking them off. The decoy clousang Jean, as they called this solstice nail, was installed in 1701, with the Apollinaris window, with St. Apollinaris destroying the Temple of Apollo. The solstice nail was sidelined as a non-event in that leaflet, which has now been completely removed and replaced by this book, written as if the Chartres Labyrinth has written it itself. And it's in plain sight. This thing that they've plopped on top of the labyrinth, it's a Hildegard de Bingen picture, which they are calling in the book a stylized labyrinth. It's nothing to do with labyrinths, but they've boldly plopped it right on top of the labyrinth. Sort of, it's right there in front of your nose. We've seen two stages in the obscuring of those Templar crosses. There's a denial of an Assumption light, which you have to read about that in my book. They blocked up the gnomon windows, as I said, and they've denied permission to use that overhead picture of the labyrinth because the inference that there was pre-Christian knowledge in the cathedral was not acceptable. There's been a literal cover-up of the solstice nail with those sheets of boarding as well. And if you want to read more about it, my book's available upstairs in the bookshop. That's it.
Okay, a big hand for Geoff Stray.